Father and two sons. A father had two sons, the elder of whom was forward and clever enough to do almost anything. But the younger was so stupid that he could learn nothing. And when the people saw him, they said, "Will thy father still keep thee as a burden to him?" So, if anything was to be done, the elder had at all times to do it. But sometimes the father would call him to fetch something in the dead of night, and perhaps the way led through the churchyard or by a dismal place, and then he used to answer, "No, father, I cannot go there, I am afraid," for he was a coward. Or sometimes of an evening, tales were told by the fireside which made one shudder, and the listeners exclaimed, "Oh, it makes us shiver." In a corner, meanwhile, sat the younger son, listening. But he could not comprehend what was said, and he thought, "They say continually, 'Oh, it makes us shiver, it makes us shiver.' But perhaps shivering is an art which I cannot understand." One day, however, his father said to him, "Do you hear, you there in the corner? You are growing stout and big. You must learn some trade to get your living by. Do you see how your brother works? But as for you, you are not worth malt and hops." "Ah, father," answered he, "I would willingly learn something. When shall I begin? I want to know what shivering means, for of that I can understand nothing." The elder brother laughed when he heard this speech, and thought to himself, "Ah, my brother is such a simpleton that he cannot earn his own living. He who would make a good hedge must learn betimes to bend." But the father sighed and said, "What shivering means you may learn soon enough, but you will never get your bread by that." Soon after, the parish sexton came in for a gossip, so the father told him his troubles, and how that his younger son was such a simpleton that he knew nothing and could learn nothing. Just fancy, when I asked him how he intended to earn his bread, he desired to learn what shivering meant. "Oh, if that be all," answered the sexton, "he can learn that soon enough with me. Just send him to my place, and I will soon teach him." The father was very glad, because he thought that it would do the boy good. So the sexton took him home to ring the bells. About 2 days afterward, he called him up at midnight to go into the church tower to toll the bell. "You shall soon learn what shivering means," thought the sexton, and getting up, he went out too. As soon as the boy reached the belfry and turned himself round to seize the rope, he saw upon the stairs, near the sounding hole, a white figure. "Who's there?" he called out. But the figure gave no answer, and neither stirred nor spoke. "Answer," said the boy, "or make haste off. You have no business here tonight." But the sexton did not stir, so that the boy might think it was a ghost. The boy called out a second time, "What are you doing here? Speak, if you are an honest fellow, or else I will throw you downstairs." The sexton said to himself, "That is not a bad thought," but he remained quiet, as if he were a stone. Then the boy called out for the third time, but it produced no effect. So, making a spring, he threw the ghost down the stairs, so that it rolled 10 steps, and then lay motionless in a corner. Thereupon he rang the bell, and then going home, he went to bed without saying a word, and fell fast asleep. The sexton's wife waited some time for her husband, but he did not come. So at last she became anxious, woke the boy, and asked him if he knew where her husband was, who had gone before him to the belfry. "No," answered the boy, "but there was someone standing on the steps who would not give any answer, nor go away. So I took him for a thief and threw him downstairs. Go now and see where he is. Perhaps it may be he, but I should be sorry for it." The wife ran off and found her husband lying in a corner, groaning, with one of his ribs broken. She took him up and ran with loud outcries to the boy's father, and said to him, "Your son has brought a great misfortune on us. He has thrown my husband down and broken his bones. Take the good-for-nothing fellow from our house." The terrified father came in haste and scolded the boy. "What do these wicked tricks mean? They will only bring misfortune upon you." "Father," answered the lad, "hear me. I am quite innocent. He stood there at midnight, like one who had done some evil. I did not know who it was, and cried 3 times, 'Speak, or be off.'" "Ah," said the father, "everything goes badly with you. Get out of my sight. I do not wish to see you again." "Yes, father, willingly. Wait but one day, then I will go out and learn what shivering means, that I may at least understand one business which will support me." "Learn what you will," replied the father. "All is the same to me. Here are $50. Go forth with them into the world, and tell no man whence you came or who your father is, for I am ashamed of you." "Yes, father, as you wish. But if you desire nothing else, I shall esteem that very lightly." As soon as day broke, the youth put his $50 into a knapsack and went out upon the high road, saying continually, "Oh, if I could but shiver." Presently a man came up, who heard the boy talking to himself, and as they were just passing the place where the gallows stood, the man said, "Do you see? There is the tree where 7 fellows have married the hempen maid, and now swing to and fro. Sit yourself down there and wait till midnight, and then you will know what it is to shiver." "Oh, if that be all," answered the boy, "I can very easily do that. But if I learn so speedily what shivering is, then you shall have my $50 if you come again in the morning." Then the boy went to the gallows, sat down, and waited for evening, and as he felt cold, he made a fire. But about midnight, the wind blew so sharp that in spite of the fire, he could not keep himself warm. The wind blew the bodies against one another so that they swung backward and forward, and he thought, "If I am cold here below by the fire, how must they freeze above?" So his compassion was excited, and contriving a ladder, he mounted, and unloosening them one after another, he brought down all 7. Then he poked and blew the fire, and set them round that they might warm themselves. But as they sat still without moving, their clothing caught fire. So he said, "Take care of yourselves, or I will hang all of you up again." The dead heard not, and silently allowed their rags to burn. This made him so angry that he said, "If you will not hear, I cannot help you, but I will not burn with you." So he hung them up again in a row, and sitting down by the fire, he soon went to sleep. The next morning the man came, expecting to receive his $50, and asked, "Now, do you know what shivering means?" "No," he answered. "How should I know?" "Those fellows up there have not opened their mouths, and were so stupid that they let the old rags on their bodies be burnt." Then the man saw that he should not carry away the $50 that day. So he went away saying, "I never met with such a one before." The boy also went on his way and began again to say, "Ah, if only I could but shiver. If I could but shiver." A wagoner walking behind overheard him and asked, "Who are you?" "I do not know," answered the boy. The wagoner asked again, "What do you hear?" "I know not." "Who is your father?" "I dare not say." "What is it you are continually grumbling about?" "Oh," replied the youth, "I wish to learn what shivering is, but nobody can teach me." "Cease your silly talk," said the wagoner. "Come with me, and I will see what I can do for you." So the boy went with the wagoner, and about evening time they arrived at an inn where they put up for the night. And while they were going into the parlor, he said, quite aloud, "Oh, if I could but shiver, if I could but shiver." The host overheard him and said laughingly, "Oh, if that is all you wish, you shall soon have the opportunity." "Hold your tongue," said his wife. "So many imprudent people have already lost their lives. It were a shame and sin to such beautiful eyes that they should not see the light again." But the youth said, "If it were ever so difficult, I would at once learn it. For that reason, I left home." And he never let the host have any peace till he told him that not far off stood an enchanted castle, where anyone might soon learn to shiver if he would watch there 3 nights. The king had promised his daughter in marriage to whoever would venture, and she was the most beautiful young lady that the sun ever shone upon. And he further told him that inside the castle there was an immense amount of treasure guarded by evil spirits, enough to make anyone free and turn a poor man into a very rich one. Many, he added, had already ventured into this castle, but no one had ever come out again. The next morning, this youth went to the king and said, "If you will allow me, I wish to watch 3 nights in the enchanted castle." The king looked at him, and because his appearance pleased him, he said, "You may make 3 requests, but they must be inanimate things you ask for, and such as you can take with you into the castle." So the youth asked for a fire, a lathe, and a cutting board. The king let him take these things by day into the castle, and when it was evening, the youth went in and made himself a bright fire in one of the rooms, and placing his cutting board and knife near it, he sat down upon his lathe. "Ah, if I could but shiver," said he, "but even here I shall never learn." At midnight he got up to stir the fire, and as he poked it, there shrieked suddenly in one corner, "Meow, meow, how cold I am!" "You simpleton," he exclaimed, "what are you shrieking for? If you are so cold, come and sit down by the fire and warm yourself." As he was speaking, 2 great black cats sprang up to him with an immense jump and sat down one on each side, looking at him quite wildly with their fiery eyes. When they had warmed themselves for a little while, they said, "Comrade, shall we have a game of cards?" "Certainly," he replied, "but let me see your paws first." So they stretched out their claws, and he said, "Ah, what long nails you have got! Wait a bit, I must cut them off first." And so saying, he caught them up by the necks and put them on his board and screwed their feet down. "Since I have seen what you are about, I have lost my relish for a game at cards," said he, and instantly killing them, threw them away into the water. But no sooner had he quieted these 2 and thought of sitting down again by his fire, than there came out of every hole and corner black cats and black dogs with glowing chains, continually more and more, so that he could not hide himself. They howled fearfully and jumped upon his fire and scattered it about as if they would extinguish it. He looked on quietly for some time, but at last, getting angry, he took up his knife and called out, "Away with you, you vagabonds!" and chased them about until a part ran off, and the rest he killed and threw into the pond. As soon as he returned, he blew up the sparks of his fire again and warmed himself. And while he sat, his eyes began to feel very heavy, and he wished to go to sleep. So looking around, he saw a great bed in one corner, in which he lay down. But no sooner had he closed his eyes than the bed began to move of itself and traveled all round the castle. "Just so," said he, "only better still." Whereupon the bed galloped away, as if 6 horses pulled it up and down steps and stairs, until at last, all at once, it overset, bottom upward, and lay upon him like a mountain. But up he got, threw pillows and mattresses into the air, and saying, "Now he who wishes may travel," laid himself down by the fire and slept till day broke. In the morning the king came, and seeing the youth lying on the ground, he thought that the spectres had killed him, and that he was dead. So he said, "It is a great misfortune that the finest men are thus killed." But the youth, hearing this, sprang up, saying, "It is not come to that with me yet." The king was much astonished, but very glad, and asked him how he had fared. "Very well," replied he. "As one night has passed, so also may the other two." Soon after he met his landlord, who opened his eyes when he saw him. "I never thought to see you alive again," said he. "Have you learnt now what shivering means?" "No," said he. "It is all of no use. Oh, if anyone would but tell me." The second night he went up again into the castle, and sitting down by the fire, began his old song, "If I could but shiver." When midnight came, a ringing and a rattling noise was heard, gentle at first and louder by degrees. Then there was a pause, and presently, with a loud outcry, half a man's body came down the chimney and fell at his feet. "Halloa!" he exclaimed. "Only half a man answered that ringing. That is too little." Then the ringing began afresh, and a roaring and howling was heard, and the other half fell down. "Wait a bit," said he. "I will poke up the fire first." When he had done so and looked round again, the two pieces had joined themselves together, and an ugly man was sitting in his place. "I did not bargain for that," said the youth. "The bench is mine." The man tried to push him away, but the youth would not let him, and giving him a violent push, sat himself down in his old place. Presently, more men fell down the chimney, one after the other, who brought 9 thigh bones and 2 skulls, which they set up, and then they began to play at 9-pins. At this, the youth wished also to play, so he asked whether he might join them. "Yes, if you have money." "Money enough," he replied, "but your balls are not quite round." So saying, he took up the skulls, and placing them on his lathe, turned them round. "Ah, now you will roll well," said he. "Halloa, now we will go at it merrily." So he played with them and lost some of his money, but as it struck 12, everything disappeared. Then he lay down and went to sleep quietly. On the morrow the king came for news, and asked him how he had fared this time. "I have been playing 9-pins," he replied, "and lost a couple of dollars." "Have you not shivered?" "No. I have enjoyed myself very much, but I wish someone would teach me that." On the third night, he sat down again on his bench, saying in great vexation, "Oh, if I could only shiver." When it grew late, 6 tall men came in bearing a coffin between them. Ah, said he, "that is surely my little cousin, who died 2 days ago." And beckoning with his finger, he called, "Come, little cousin, come." The men set down the coffin upon the ground, and he went up and took off the lid, and there lay a dead man within, and as he felt the face, it was as cold as ice. "Stop a moment," he cried, "I will warm it in a trice." and stepping up to the fire, he warmed his hands and then laid them upon the face, but it remained cold. So he took up the body, and sitting down by the fire, he laid it on his lap and rubbed the arms that the blood might circulate again. But all this was of no avail, and he thought to himself, if two lie in a bed together, they warm each other. So he put the body in the bed, and covering it up, laid himself down by its side. After a little while, the body became warm and began to move about. "See, my cousin," he exclaimed, "have I not warmed you?" But the body got up and exclaimed, "Now I will strangle you." "Is that your gratitude?" cried the youth. "Then you shall get into your coffin again." And taking it up, he threw the body in and made the lid fast. Then the 6 men came in again and bore it away. "Oh, dearie me," said he, "I shall never be able to shiver if I stop here all my lifetime." At these words in came a man who was taller than all the others and looked more horrible. But he was very old and had a long white beard. "Oh, you wretch," he exclaimed, "now thou shalt learn what shivering means, for thou shalt die." "Not so quick," answered the youth. "If I die, I must be brought to it first." "I will quickly seize you," replied the ugly one. "Softly, softly, be not too sure. I am as strong as you, and perhaps stronger." "That we will see," said the ugly man. "If you are stronger than I will let you go. Come, let us try." And he led him away through a dark passage to a smith's forge. Then, taking up an axe, he cut through the anvil at one blow down to the ground. "I can do that still better," said the youth, and went to another anvil, while the old man followed him and watched him, with his long beard hanging down. Then the youth took up an axe, and splitting the anvil at one blow, wedged the old man's beard in it. "Now I have you. Now death comes upon you." And taking up an iron bar, he beat the old man until he groaned and begged him to stop, and he would give him great riches. So the youth drew out the axe and let him loose. Then the old man, leading him back into the castle, showed him 3 chests full of gold in a cellar. "One share of this," said he, "belongs to the poor, another to the king, and a third to yourself." And just then it struck 12, and the old man vanished, leaving the youth in the dark. "I must help myself out here," said he, and groping round, he found his way back to his room and went to sleep by the fire. The next morning the king came and inquired, "Now have you learnt to shiver?" "No," replied the youth. "What is it?" "My dead cousin came here, and a bearded man, who showed me a lot of gold down below. But what shivering means, no one has showed me." Then the king said, "You have won the castle and shall marry my daughter." "That is all very fine," replied the youth, "but still, I don't know what shivering means." So the gold was fetched, and the wedding was celebrated. But the young prince, for the youth was a prince now, notwithstanding his love for his bride and his great contentment, was still continually crying, "If I could but shiver, if I could but shiver." At last it fell out in this wise. One of the chambermaids said to the princess, "Let me bring in my aide to teach him what shivering is." So she went to the brook, which flowed through the garden, and drew up a pail of water full of little fish. And at night, when the young prince was asleep, his bride drew away the covering and poured the pail of cold water and the little fishes over him, so that they slipped all about him. Then the prince woke up directly, calling out, "Oh, that makes me shiver, dear wife, that makes me shiver. Yes, now I know what shivering means."